Hello everyone, I'm the storyteller, and I'm here to guide you into a peaceful rest tonight. I know many of you use these videos to help you unwind and drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, it really helps. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Get cozy, settle in, and let's journey into tonight's story. Relax, and let the soothing sounds carry you away. The first rule of camping in Devil's Hollow was simple: never stay past sunset. But as 7 friends from college, seasoned hikers with a penchant for thrill-seeking, gathered around the flickering campfire, none of them paid much mind to old wives and #039 tales. They'd arrived earlier that afternoon, trekking deep into the forest to find the perfect spot. Towering pines stretched toward the sky, their canopies blotting out much of the sun. A crisp, earthy scent permeated the air, and the distant sound of a stream provided a soothing backdrop. It was a setting straight out of an adventure catalog. End quote. You think we'll see any ghosts? End quote. Melanie joked as she poked the fire with a stick, her voice dripping with mock seriousness. The flames crackled in response. Oh, definitely, Liam said, rolling his eyes. Maybe we'll even get abducted by aliens. Honestly, Mel, you're worse than the locals. I'm just saying, Melanie countered. Places get reputations for a reason. What if there's some truth to it? Ethan laughed, tossing another log onto the fire. If anything weird happens, we'll have plenty of time to outrun the ghost. After all, it's 7 against 1. Their laughter echoed through the hollow, bouncing off the trees like a taunt to whatever might be lurking in the shadows. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest transformed. The warm hues of daylight gave way to a cold, gray twilight. A mist began to creep in, curling around the base of the trees like skeletal fingers. The wind whistled through the pines, carrying with it an eerie, almost melodic sound. It's getting cold, said Natalie, pulling her jacket tighter. She was the most skeptical of the group, but even she couldn't deny the uncanny atmosphere that seemed to settle over them. It's just the forest, Alex reassured her. They're naturally spooky at night. Or it's the ghosts, Melanie quipped, earning a groan from Liam. The group settled in for the night, sharing stories and passing around a flask of whiskey. Yet, as the hours ticked by, an unease began to creep in. Small, unexplainable things started happening. The fire would flicker violently, even though the wind had died down. Strange sounds, faint whispers or distant footsteps, seemed to emanate from the darkness. And then there was the feeling, an overwhelming sense of being watched. Around midnight, the unease reached its peak. Did anyone else hear that? Asked Julia, her voice trembling. She was usually the fearless one, the kind of person who thrived on adrenaline. But now, she looked genuinely unnerved. Hear what? Ethan asked, though his face betrayed his own nerves. Like a cry, Julia replied. It came from over there. She pointed toward the dense woods beyond their campsite. Everyone fell silent, straining their ears. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the crackling fire. Then, faintly, they heard it, a low, mournful wail. It was distant, yet it sent shivers down their spines. Probably just an animal, Alex said, though his voice lacked conviction. It didn't sound like an animal, Melanie whispered. Despite their apprehension, curiosity won out. Armed with flashlights and a couple of knives, the group ventured into the woods to investigate. The mist thickened as they moved further from the fire, their breaths visible in the chilly air. The trees seemed to close in around them, their gnarled branches resembling skeletal hands reaching for the sky. This is a bad idea, Natalie muttered. We should go back. We're fine, Ethan said, though his grip on the flashlight tightened. The wail sounded again, louder this time. It seemed to come from all around them, bouncing off the trees in a way that made it impossible to pinpoint the source. What the hell is that? Liam asked, his voice rising in panic. No one answered. The group pressed on, their footsteps crunching against the frosty ground. Then, they saw it, a figure standing in the distance. It was barely visible through the mist, but its silhouette was unmistakable. Tall, gaunt, and unnervingly still. "Who's there?" Alex called out, his voice cracking. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly turned and began to walk deeper into the woods. Against their better judgment, they followed. The figure led them to a clearing where the mist seemed to swirl unnaturally. In the center of the clearing stood a decrepit cabin, its wooden walls warped and rotting. The figure was nowhere to be seen. "This can't be real," Melanie whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's real," Julia said, staring at the cabin. "Too real." Despite their fear, an unspoken agreement seemed to pass among them. They had come this far, they couldn't turn back now. Slowly, they approached the cabin. The door creaked open as they neared, revealing an interior shrouded in darkness. "I don't like this," Natalie said, her voice shaking. "We should leave." "Not yet," Ethan said. "Just a quick look." They stepped inside, the wooden floor groaning under their weight. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the temperature seemed to drop even further. Their flashlights illuminated strange symbols carved into the walls, as well as crude drawings that depicted figures being hunted by shadowy entities. "What is this place?" Melanie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's just go," Liam said, backing toward the door. But as they turned to leave, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The flashlights flickered, then went out, plunging them into darkness. Panic set in. They screamed, shouted, banged on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The air grew heavy, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in. And then, the whispers began, soft, insidious, like voices speaking directly into their ears. "You shouldn't have come," the voices said. "You don't belong here." Suddenly, the flashlights flickered back to life, casting shaky beams of light across the room. But the room had changed. The walls were now covered in blood, the symbols glowing faintly. And standing in the corner was the figure from the woods. It turned toward them, revealing a face that was pale and featureless, save for two hollow, black pits where its eyes should have been. It opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, the room was filled with a deafening, high-pitched screech. The group bolted for the door, which finally gave way. They ran blindly through the woods, the mist clawing at them as if trying to pull them back. The wailing and whispers followed them, growing louder and more frantic. When they finally reached their campsite, they didn't stop. They grabbed their belongings and ran, leaving the fire to burn out on its own. They didn't stop running until they were back at their cars. Panting and shaking, they piled in and drove away, vowing never to speak of what they'd seen. But the hollow wasn't done with them. Echo.